Something happened to me on New Year's Eve, and to this day I question whether it was real. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I was alone that night, completely alone, in a 12-story building in downtown Chicago that shouldn't have had anyone inside. The security company scheduled me for the December 31st shift because no one else wanted it. They paid double. I accepted. I had nowhere else to go anyway. The building had been empty for 6 months. Abandoned offices, furniture covered with white sheets, that smell of mold and accumulated dust. The bankruptcy of the main company took everyone away. Only the emergency lights, the alarm system, and me remained. At 9 o'clock at night, I began my rounds. My job was simple. Go through each floor, check doors, note any irregularities. The company radio hanging from my belt was my only connection to the outside world. My cell phone didn't get a signal on the upper floors, only static. The heat was stifling. Chicago was experiencing an unusual heat wave for December. All the windows in the building were closed, and the air conditioning had been off for months. I was sweating inside my uniform as I walked through the silent hallways. On the 3rd floor, I stopped. The light in the main hallway flickered 3 times and went out. I turned on my flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing only dust floating in the air. Nothing else. I kept walking. That's when I heard it for the first time. A low sound, almost imperceptible, like a muffled laugh coming from the end of the hallway. I turned the flashlight in that direction. Nothing. Just the bathroom door ajar, swinging slightly. "Hello?" My voice echoed. Silence. I walked to the door and pushed it open. The bathroom was empty. Sinks lined up, mirrors fogged up, faucets dripping. I slammed the door shut and kept walking. On the 5th floor, the radio crackled. High, sharp static. I held the device and adjusted the volume. The static decreased, but didn't disappear completely. It was as if someone was on the other end, trying to talk, but the transmission wasn't coming through properly. "Base, this is Marcelo. Everything's fine on the 5th floor. Over. Nothing. Just a hissing sound." Then, for a fraction of a second, I heard a voice. Low, distant, male. Happy. Guided. "Base, repeat, please." Over. Silence again. Just static. I turned off the radio and took a deep breath. I was tired, that's all. But as I climbed the stairs to the 6th floor, I felt something I couldn't ignore. The sensation that someone was watching me. It wasn't paranoia, it was physical. A pressure on my back, like eyes fixed on me. I turned around quickly. Nothing. Just the empty hallway behind me. I continued climbing. Outside, the fireworks were already starting. Colorful explosions lit up the building's windows. People were celebrating, laughing, living life to the fullest, and I was trapped in there. On the 7th floor, things changed. I was checking the doors when I heard it. It wasn't a muffled laugh or static on the radio anymore. It was a clear voice, crisp, coming from the end of the hallway. Someone was singing. It wasn't loud. It was a melodic murmur, as if the person were alone, distracted, a song I didn't recognize. I stood still, holding the flashlight tightly. My heart raced. "Is anyone there?" I shouted. The voice stopped immediately. Absolute silence. I walked slowly down the corridor, the flashlight trembling in my hand. The office doors were all locked. I had personally locked each one during my previous patrol. There was no way anyone could have gotten in. But the voice, I had heard it. I'm sure of it. I reached the end of the corridor. The last door was ajar. Impossible. I locked that room myself 3 hours ago. I pushed the door open slowly. The hinge creaked. The room was empty. Tables covered with white sheets, chairs stacked, dirty windows reflecting the lights of the fireworks outside. Nothing else. But the air was different, colder, as if someone had just left. I closed the door and locked it again. My hand trembled as I turned the key. The radio crackled again. This time, the voice was clear, masculine, calm. "Happy New Year, Marcelo." I dropped the radio on the floor. It fell with a dry thud, but continued emitting sound. The static returned, louder, hissing as if it were fighting against something. I picked up the device and pressed the button. "Who are you? Identify yourself." The answer came almost instantly. "Don't you recognize me?" My blood froze. I knew that voice. I knew it very well. It was Danny. Danny died 2 years ago. Workplace accident. Right here, on the 10th floor. He fell from the scaffolding during maintenance. I was there. I saw everything. The fall. The impact. The silence afterwards. "That's not funny," I whispered into the radio. "Whoever you are, that's not funny. Come up here, Marcelo. Everyone's waiting." I turned off the radio. I ripped out the batteries and threw the device on the floor, but the voice continued, coming from the hallway, coming from above, sounds of footsteps, lots of footsteps, as if several people were walking through the upper floors, muffled laughter, indistinct conversations, and then, clapping. Someone was clapping rhythmically, like at a party. I ran up to the 8th floor. I needed to know. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The hallway lights were on, all of them. I knew it had all been off before. I was sure of it. And the doors, all open, wide open, swinging slightly, as if someone had just walked by. I entered the first room, empty. I entered the second, empty. In the third, a chair was facing the window, as if someone had just gotten up. And then I heard it again, louder this time. "Happy New Year." It wasn't one voice, it was several. Dozens of them, coming from all sides. From the radio on my belt, even without batteries. From the hallways, from the rooms, from the walls. I recognized some of them. Danny, Maria, the receptionist who had a heart attack in the elevator. Robert, the janitor who disappeared in the basement and was found days later. They're all dead. Everyone's here. And everyone is calling me. I should have left. I should have run to the stairs, gone down the 8 flights of stairs, and gotten out of that damn building. But I couldn't. My feet wouldn't obey. It was like something was pulling me up. Towards them. On the 9th floor, the voices became clearer. It wasn't whispers or murmurs anymore. It was real conversation, laughter, the clinking of glasses, as if there was a party happening somewhere nearby. I could hear music now, not from the radio, but from the air around me. Old music, the kind they played at office parties in the 90s. I stopped in the middle of the hallway. The flashlight illuminated something on the floor. Confetti. Small pieces of colored paper were scattered across the dusty carpet. I picked one up. It was damp, fresh, as if it had just been thrown there. "This isn't happening," I repeated to myself. "This isn't happening." But it was. The door to the conference room at the end of the corridor was open. Yellow light leaked through it, dancing on the walls as if candles were lit inside. I walked toward it. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if I were walking against an invisible current. When I reached the door, I stopped. On the other side, I heard clear voices, a woman laughing, a man telling a joke, someone making a toast. At midnight. "Happy New Year!" To those who remained, I pushed the door open. The room was empty. There was no one there, just tables covered with sheets, overturned chairs, and that yellow light I had seen. It came from the window. The fireworks outside illuminated everything in intermittent flashes, but the confetti kept falling from the ceiling, falling alone, floating in the air as if there were an invisible party happening all around me. The radio on my belt crackled again, even without batteries, even switched off. "Marcelo, come up here." It was Danny again. His voice was closer now, more real, as if he were right behind me. I turned around quickly. Nothing, just the empty hallway. But then, I saw it. A shadow. Quick. passing through the door of the next room. A human silhouette, but undefined. No face, just the shape of someone moving. And then another, and another. They were everywhere now, slipping through open doors, slithering down hallways, always on the periphery of my vision, always disappearing when I tried to look directly at them. I went up to the 10th floor. I don't know why. Maybe because that's where Danny had died. Maybe because I needed to understand. The stairs were covered in wet footprints, as if several people had recently climbed them. I followed the tracks with my flashlight. They led directly to the door on the 10th floor. I pushed the door open. The hallway was full of them, silhouettes, dozens of them. Still, motionless, all turned towards me. I can't quite describe it. They weren't transparent. They didn't shine. They were just shapes, dark, dense, taking up real space in the hallway. And they were all looking at me. At least, I felt they were. From the radio, Danny's voice echoed one last time. "It's almost time. Marcelo. 5 minutes to go. Are you going to spend New Year's Eve with us? Or are you going to stay out there alone?" Outside, the fireworks began to explode faster. The countdown had begun. People in the city were shouting, celebrating, living life to the fullest. And in here, the dead waited. If this made you uncomfortable, wait for the next chapter. I should have run. I should have screamed. But I stood there, paralyzed, staring at those shapes in the hallway. They didn't move. They just remained there, dense, silent, occupying the space as if they had always belonged there. And perhaps they belonged. The air grew heavy, icy. My breath now came out in white clouds, even with the suffocating heat I felt minutes before. Each exhalation was visible, trembling in the air before disappearing. The silhouettes began to move, not toward me, not yet. They turned slowly, all at once, and began walking toward the end of the hallway, toward the stairs that led to the 11th floor. I followed them. I don't know why. It was as if my feet had a will of their own, as if something was pulling me along with them. I kept my distance, but continued walking, the flashlight trembling in my hand. The silhouettes climbed the stairs in silence, no sound of footsteps, only the fluid movement of shapes moving upwards. When I got to the 11th floor, I heard the music again, but now it was different. It was no longer muffled or distant. It was loud, real, as if there were a live band playing somewhere nearby. Smooth jazz music, the kind they played at elegant parties. The doors along the corridor were all open, and inside each room, light. Not the dim yellow light of fireworks. It was warm, white light, as if the rooms were completely illuminated. I could see shadows moving inside, people dancing, talking, toasting. I approached the first door and looked inside. The room was empty, but the shadows continued to move on the walls, dancing without bodies, projected by something I couldn't see. I kept walking. Each room was the same, empty, but alive. Music playing without a source, laughter echoing without mouths, glasses clinking without hands. At the end of the corridor, the double doors to the event room were wide open, and inside, I saw everything. The room was full, completely full. Tables decorated with white tablecloths, champagne glasses, plates of untouched food. Gold and silver balloons floated near the ceiling. A disco ball spun slowly, projecting points of light everywhere. And they were there. No longer just silhouettes. Now I could see them. People, dressed in party clothes, smiling, talking, dancing to the music. I recognized some faces. Danny was in the center of the room, holding a glass. He saw me. He smiled. He waved. "Marcelo, you came." My throat was dry. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. Maria, the receptionist, was standing next to him. She was wearing a red dress, her hair styled in an elegant bun, She saw me too. She smiled too. "We were waiting for you." Robert, the caretaker, was serving champagne into glasses lined up on a table. He looked at me and raised a glass toward me. "Happy New Year, young man." I wanted to scream. I wanted to say they were dead, that it wasn't real. But the words wouldn't come out. I just watched, motionless, while they all looked at me with those calm, empty smiles. Danny approached. Each of his steps felt real. I could hear the sound of his shoes on the wooden floor. He reached out to me. "Come on, it's almost time. The countdown is about to begin." Outside, the fireworks exploded louder. 10, 9, 8. The whole room began counting together. Their voices blended into a uniform chorus, echoing off the walls. 7, 6, 5. Danny was still holding my hand in the air, waiting for me to take it. 4, 3, 2. I took a step back, and then I ran. I ran through the corridors. I stumbled down the stairs. I heard voices shouting behind me. "Marcelo, come back! You can't leave! You promised to stay." I never promised anything. I got to the ground floor. The front door was locked. I banged on it hard. I kicked it. I yelled. Nothing. Midnight has arrived. The fireworks exploded outside in a deafening symphony, and inside the building, absolute silence. I woke up on the lobby floor. Sunlight streamed through the dirty windows, cutting through the dusty air in golden beams. My body ached. My head throbbed. I stood slowly, leaning against the cold wall. The front door was unlocked. I pushed it. It opened without resistance. Outside, Chicago was waking up. Cars sped along the wet streets. People walked briskly, carrying bags, talking on the phone. The sky was clear, blue, normal. It was January 1st. I looked back. The building was exactly as it had always been, empty, silent, dead. I stepped out onto the sidewalk. The cool air hit my face like a slap. I took a deep breath, feeling my lungs burn. I was alive. I was alive. I called the security company. I said I had fallen ill during my shift and needed a replacement. They agreed. No one asked any questions. I went home by taxi. The whole way there, I kept looking out the window, trying to understand what had happened, trying to find a logical explanation. Extreme exhaustion, dehydration, heat-induced hallucination. Maybe I had fainted and dreamt it all. Maybe the stress of loneliness, the memories of Danny, the date. Maybe all of that had mixed together in my head and created that experience. It was the only possible explanation. But then, why could I still smell champagne on my clothes? I got home. I took a shower. I changed my clothes. I threw my uniform in the trash. I didn't want to see it anymore. I spent the next few days trying to forget. I went back to my routine. I accepted shifts in other places, residential buildings, shops, anything but that building. But the voices did not stop, not during the day, not in the way it happened that night, but at night, when everything is quiet, when I'm about to fall asleep. I hear it, low static, like a poorly tuned radio. And then, very far away, almost imperceptible, laughter, conversations, music, and Danny's voice. "You should have stayed, Marcelo. It was so good." 2 weeks later, I received a call from the security company. They asked if I wanted to return to the building. They said they needed someone for one last shift before the demolition. Triple pay. I refused. But that night, lying in bed, I started to think, what if I needed to go back? What if the only way to stop the voices was to understand what really happened? What if they were still waiting for me? I picked up my cell phone. I looked for news about the building. I found an old article from a local newspaper. Commercial building in downtown Chicago to be demolished after years of neglect. I read the text. Nothing special. Just information about the company's bankruptcy, the demolition plans, and the expected date. But then I saw something at the end of the article. A list of accidents that had happened in the building over the years. Danny, Maria, Robert, and others, many others. 17 deaths in total. 17 people died in that building over the course of 30 years, and all of them happened on New Year's Eve. I closed the browser. My hand was trembling. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of the apartment. And then, at 11:47 p.m., my cell phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Shelter. It was a photo. Taken from inside the building, from the 11th floor, from the event room. The room was decorated. Balloons, lights, tables set. And in the center of the image, with their back to the camera, a figure. Danny. He was looking out the window, and in the window, reflected in the glass, you, my face, looking inside, as if I were there at that exact moment. I dropped my phone. It fell onto the bed, the screen still lit, showing the photo. And then, a new message arrived. Next year, you'll stay. I deleted everything. I blocked the number, but I know it's no use. Because now, whenever the year is ending, whenever I see fireworks or hear people celebrating, I feel it. They are still waiting, and one day, I will return. Something happened to me at the turn of the year last year, and to this day, I still can't fully understand it. My name is Rodrigo. I'm 28 years old, and at the time, I was desperate for money. Overdue bills, maxed out credit cards, that kind of silent desperation that makes you accept anything. That's why I said yes when they offered me the midnight shift on New Year's Eve at the Millbrook Industrial Warehouse, on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. I was paying triple. Nobody wanted it. I should have been suspicious. I arrived at 10:30 p.m., as agreed. The place was an old complex, one of those that were once important decades ago. 3 floors of gray concrete, long corridors, dirty windows, a musty smell, and rusty metal. The company still used some warehouses for storage, but most were empty, awaiting demolition or renovation that never came. When I walked in, I found the previous shift's team in the control room. There were 4 of them, 2 older security guards, a cleaning lady, and a maintenance technician. They all looked at me with an expression I can't forget. It wasn't pity, it was fear. "Are you the new one?" asked the older one, a guy named Eddie, with gray hair and deep dark circles under his eyes. "I am Rodrigo. I came to cover the turnaround." He exchanged a quick glance with the others. The cleaning lady lowered her eyes. The coach swallowed hard. "Listen," Eddie said quietly, as if someone could hear. Are you sure you want to stay?" I laughed. I thought it was a joke. "Sure, I need the money. It doesn't stay past midnight." Heavy silence. "Like this? Leave early. Make up any excuse. Say you felt unwell. But it doesn't stay." The woman stood up and grabbed her purse hurriedly. "If you hear something, you don't investigate. You just leave." "Listen to what?" No one answered. At 11 p.m., sharp, as if they had planned it, everyone started to leave, quickly, without goodbyes. Eddie left the radio on, low static. The lights in the main hallways remained on. Doors that should have been locked were open. "Hey, but you're not going to..." Eddie stopped at the door, turned around one last time. "Good luck, kid." And he left. I was left alone. I looked around. Everything was functional, organized, but hastily abandoned. Cups of coffee still warm. Chairs pushed aside. The radio crackling with continuous static. I laughed again. Nervous now. "Ridiculous superstition," I muttered. I sat in the swivel chair and picked up my cell phone. No signal. Normal for that place. I looked at the clock on the wall. 23:07. Less than an hour until midnight. I had no idea what was about to happen. I decided to do the first round, part of the job, right? I grabbed the flashlight, the dead walkie-talkie, nobody on the other end, and started walking down the corridors. The complex was larger than it appeared from the outside. U-shaped corridors, empty rooms on both sides, some with open doors revealing old desks, dusty filing cabinets, and overturned chairs. The smell of peeling paint and dampness hung in the air. Everything is silent. Too quiet. My footsteps echoed on the cracked linoleum floor. I tried to walk slowly, but every sound seemed amplified. My breathing, the creaking of my jacket, the distant hum of fluorescent lights. It was on the second floor that I started to notice the lights. They were lit in a specific pattern, not randomly. 4 rooms in a row with the light on. 3 off, 4 on, 3 off, as if someone had planned it. And the radios. There were small portable radios in several rooms, all switched on, all tuned to the same station, pure static, no voice, no music, just that continuous, low, almost hypnotic hiss. Why would they leave it like this? I thought aloud. My voice sounded strange, muffled, as if the air swallowed the sound. I kept walking. That's when I heard it. Steps. Not mine. Others. They came from the parallel corridor, on the other side of the floor. Slow. Shuffling. Steady steps. Talk. 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 I stopped. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped as well. "Hello," I called. "Is anyone there?" Nothing. Just the static from the radios. I walked to the door that led to the hallway next door. I looked both ways. Empty. Completely empty. But I had heard. I returned to the control room, trying to remain calm. It's an old building, I told myself. The structure creaks. Pipes. Wind. I sat down in the chair. I looked at the clock. 23:51. 9 minutes. The temperature dropped. It wasn't gradual. It was instantaneous, like someone had turned on an industrial air conditioner. My breath turned to vapor. I felt the hairs on my arm stand on end under my jacket. And then, breathing. It wasn't mine. It came from somewhere nearby. Heavy, slow, damp. I stood up slowly, looked around. The room was empty, but the breathing continued. Behind me, beside me, below me. No, it came from everywhere at the same time. I grabbed the flashlight and pointed it at the dark corners. Nothing, but his breathing wouldn't stop. And then I heard it again. Footsteps. But now they weren't coming from one hallway. They were coming from several, simultaneous, synchronized footsteps, as if dozens of people were walking through the floors. Talk, 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 talk. I looked at the blurry security monitor. The cameras showed empty hallways, but 2 heard clearly. And now, I could hear voices too. Whispers, no words, just tones, deep, hoarse, repetitive. I looked at the clock again, 23:58, 2 minutes. That's when I tried to leave. I ran to the main door of the complex, the same one Eddie had used. I pushed it open, locked. Impossible. It was open when they left. I tried the side. Locked. The one in the back. Locked. All of them. Locked from the inside. "No!" I yelled, pounding on the metal door. "Open this damn door!" Silence. And then, right behind me, in the dark hallway, Rodrigo. A voice. Hoarse. Slow. Impossible. I turned slowly. The control room light flickered 3 times. The clock showed 11:59 p.m. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I stood there, my back to the locked door, staring down the dark hallway ahead. The voice didn't repeat my name, but I knew I'd heard it. Deep, drawn out, as if it came from a damaged throat. "Who's there?" I managed to say, my voice trembling. Nothing. Just the static from the radios. That damned static, now louder, almost aggressive. I started backing away down the side corridor, trying to find another way out, a window, anything. The flashlight trembled in my hand. I pointed it in every direction, hoping to see, I don't know what. That's when I saw the first shadow. At the end of the corridor. Stop. It wasn't an ordinary shadow, cast by something. It was a figure humanoid. Tall, immobile. Just observing. I blinked. She was still there. "Hey!" I shouted, more out of desperation than courage. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure didn't move, but another one appeared, on the other side of the hallway, also standing still, also watching me, and then another, and another. They appeared in open doorways, on street corners, in stairwells. Dark silhouettes, without details, just shapes. All turned towards me. They made no noise. They didn't breathe. They were there. I backed up until I was against the wall, cold sweat streaming down my face despite the absurd cold. I looked at the clock on the hallway wall, 11:59:30 p.m. If this made you uncomfortable, wait for the next chapter. The footsteps began again, all at once. The figures started to move. They didn't walk like people. They moved awkwardly, rigidly, mechanically. Like puppets pulled by invisible strings, their arms hung down, their heads slightly tilted, and they were coming towards me. "No!" I yelled, running back to the other side of the hallway. I climbed the stairs to the third floor, tripped, bumped my knee, but I didn't stop. The pain was nothing compared to the pure terror that consumed me. I went into the first room I found and locked the door. It was an old administrative office. There were old desks, yellowed papers, and a 2003 calendar on the wall. I leaned against the door, breathless, trying to think. And then I heard from the other end, scratches. They weren't human fingernails. It was something heavier, metallic, as if claws were scraping wood, slowly, rhythmic. I stepped away from the door, backing up until I bumped into a filing cabinet. It rattled. Several documents fell out. That's when I saw it. An old briefcase, covered in worn leather, with a handwritten label, Incident Reports, New Year's Eve. I opened it with trembling hands. There were reports, dozens of them, all typed on old paper. The first one was from 1987. Security guard Marcus Allen disappeared during his shift change. Found 3 days later in the basement, catatonic. He kept repeating, "They're back. They always come back." 1991. Caretaker Sarah Kempt, found unconscious. Claims to have seen human shadows appearing at midnight, resigns, develops severe agoraphobia. 1998. Supervisor Daniel Rourke, never found. Last seen on camera at 11:59 p.m. At 12:01 a.m., cameras show an empty hallway. 2006, 2011, 2015, every year. Always someone, always at midnight. And at the end of the folder, a recent handwritten note, dated December of the previous year. There is no logical explanation. The complex was built on top of an old municipal cemetery that was relocated in 1952. Records indicate incomplete removal. Every year, something returns. Protocol: evacuate the premises before 11:30 p.m. Never leave anyone alone after 11:45 p.m. My stomach churned. Eddie knew. Everyone knew. And they left me here. I looked at my wristwatch. 00. Midnight. The door exploded. The door wasn't forced open. It simply opened, violently, as if something invisible had ripped it from its hinges, and they went in. They weren't shadows now. They were figures human in form, but completely flawed in execution. The skin, if it was skin at all, had a grayish, opaque tone, like old wax. The faces, God, the faces, empty, expressionless, deep-set black eyes, without reflection, mouths slightly open, but without movement, without breath. They moved in perfect sync, identical steps, heads tilted at the same angle. I counted 7. 7 figures stood in the doorway of the room, staring at me. I retreated until there was no more room, pressed against the dirty window. My whole body trembled. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. One of them stepped forward. It wasn't a normal step. The foot dragged along the ground, making that sound, talk, and the whole body followed, rigid, as if it were a single piece. "Please," I managed to whisper. "I didn't know. I didn't—" He stopped just inches from me. Up close, I could see better. The skin wasn't smooth. It had cracks, small fissures, like broken porcelain, and from them, something was coming out. It wasn't blood. It was a dark, viscous substance that trickled slowly. He raised his hand, fingers that are too long, incorrect joints, missing nails, just exposed flesh at the tips. He touched my chest. The cold was unbearable. It wasn't just temperature. It was an absence. As if that touch drained something from inside me. Heat, energy, life. My vision blurred at the edges. I felt my knees give way. And then, I heard it. Voices, multiple, whispering in unison. They weren't coming from the figures. They were coming from inside my head. "Stay. You belong here. One of us. One of us. One of us." "No!" I screamed, gathering strength from somewhere deep within. I pushed the figure with all my might. It didn't fall, but it took a step back. That was enough. I ran. I pushed my way through them, feeling their cold hands brushing against me, trying to grab me. I left the room, stumbled down the stairs, almost falling head first. The entire complex had changed. The walls looked like live. They pulsed slightly. The air was thick, viscous, as if I were underwater. The lights flickered erratically, creating distorted shadows that moved on their own. And they were there everywhere, in the hallways, in the rooms, climbing the stairs. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all moving toward me, slowly, inexorably. I ran to the control room. I locked the door and pushed a table against it. I was breathing in spasms. Tears streamed uncontrollably. I picked up my cell phone. Still no signal. I looked at the security monitors. All the cameras showed the same thing. Figures. Filling every corridor, every room, every staircase. Going up, coming. And then, a camera showed something different. The subsoil. There was an open door I hadn't seen before. And inside, bodies. Not dead, but not alive. Sitting. Still. Staring ahead. Like statues. I recognized a face. The security guard from 1987. Marcus Allen. He was still there. Aged, but intact. Immobile. Empty. They didn't kill. They maintained. Someone knocked on the door. Once. Twice. 3 times. Rhythmic. Calculated. "Rodrigo!" the hoarse voice called again. "Open up! Go away!" I yelled, slamming my fist on the table. "Leave me alone!" The clock on the wall showed 0.17. I had to survive until dawn. I don't know how long I lay huddled under that table in the control room. Minutes. Hours. Time had lost its meaning. The knocking on the door never stopped. Always rhythmic. Always at the same interval. Like a macabre metronome. And those voices, whispering endlessly, seeping through the cracks, infiltrating my mind. "Abra, come. You're already one of us." I covered my ears. I sang silly songs in my head. Anything to avoid hearing them. But they were there. Within, there was no way to block it. I looked at the clock. 1:43 a.m. There was still a long way to go. The sun wouldn't rise until around 6 o'clock. I grabbed the bottle of water Eddie had left. I took a sip. It was ice cold, freezing, like it came straight from a freezer. That's when I realized. The radio had stopped making static. Now something was playing, softly, almost imperceptible. A song, old, distorted, Auld Lang Syne, the New Year's song. But I was wrong. Too slow. The notes were drawn out, dissonant, as if played by out-of-tune or broken instruments. And then a voice began to sing along. It wasn't human. It was something imitating a human voice. I turned off the radio with a slap. Absolute silence. The banging had stopped. I stood up slowly and looked at the monitor. The hallways were empty, completely empty. Not a single figure, not a single shadow. Could it be that they had left? I looked at the clock. 4:51 a.m. Less than 2 hours until sunrise. I needed to endure it. Just a little longer. I dragged myself to the dirty window of the control room. I wiped the glass with my jacket sleeve. Outside, it was still dark, but I could see the first hints of blue on the distant horizon. Almost. I was almost there. I sat down again, hugging my knees, shivering from the cold and exhaustion. That's when I heard a different sound. Soft. Almost gentle. Children's footsteps. I looked down the hallway through the fogged glass of the door. A child. No, it wasn't a child. It was a form of a child. Small. Dirty white dress. Long hair covering her face. She stopped in front of the door. He slowly raised his head. Where there should have been a face, there was only darkness. A deep, three-dimensional void that seemed to pull the light away from it. And then she spoke, in Eddie's voice. "You shouldn't have stayed, kid." I recoiled and fell back down on my bottom. The child thing placed its hand on the glass. It didn't hit it. It just rested it. And where it touched, the glass began to crack, slowly. Thin lines spreading like spiderwebs. "No! No! No!" I screamed. I grabbed the chair and threw it against the outside window. The glass shattered. Cold morning air rushed in. I didn't think. I just jumped. It was the first floor. Thank God. I fell badly. Twisted my ankle, but I got up and ran. I ran through the empty parking lot, along the fence, down the dirt road. I ran until my lungs burned, until my ankles screamed, until I couldn't run anymore. I collapsed by the side of the road. I looked back. The complex was there. Silent, dark, empty. The sun was beginning to rise. It was 6:07 a.m. A driver met me 20 minutes later. He took me to the city. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't want to explain. I never went back. I never answered the company's calls. I never received my payment. I moved from Portland 3 weeks later. But here's the part that haunts me. Since that night, every day, when the clock strikes midnight, I hear it. The steps. It doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter if I'm awake or asleep. At exactly midnight, I hear those dragging footsteps. Tuck, tuck, tuck. And sometimes, I see a shadow in the window. A figure at the end of the hallway in my apartment, standing still, watching me. Last night, I woke up at 3:47 a.m. There was something written on the fogged-up window of my room, on the side of within. 2 words, written with a finger. "Welcome back." I didn't survive that night. I thought that I survived. Maybe I never really left that place. Maybe I'm still there, sitting in the basement, motionless, empty. One of them. And if you're listening to this, if you're listening to me now, beware of shifts that nobody wants. Beware of places that become empty at midnight, because something is always waiting, and when you realize, it will be too late by then. Something happened to me that night, and to this day I can't say if the year really ended. I was alone in the building when it all started. New Year's Eve is usually a quiet time for those who work as night watchmen, but that night the silence felt wrong, too dense, as if the air had been mistakenly left there. The building was located in the center of Cleveland, Ohio, an old commercial building, concrete stained by time, corridors far too long for so few offices. Most businesses had closed early. Nobody wanted to start a new year working. Except me. I sat in the guard booth with a weak, cold coffee, watching the digital clock above the door. 23:49. There were 11 minutes left. I've always hated the turn of the year. Everyone waiting for changes that never come, promises that evaporate before February. Maybe that's why I accepted these shifts. Nothing changes when you're working. The radio in the lobby crackled softly, a local station playing old holiday songs. I could barely hear it. My focus was on the clock. It always had been. Something about watching time pass calmed me, as if I could prove that, despite everything, it still obeyed some kind of order. To the 23:58 I got up to do one last round. Empty hallways, flickering fluorescent lights, the smell of dust and cheap cleaning products. My footsteps echoed as if someone else were walking out of sync with me. It was in the meeting room on the 3rd floor that I noticed the first mistake. The analog clock on the wall was stopped. I stopped in front of it, waiting for the pointer to move. 23:59. No ticking sound, no vibration. I quickly returned to the guard post. The digital clock showed 23:59:50, 10 seconds. He smiled, a little nervously. Electrical failure, nothing more than that. But the seconds didn't pass. I waited for 51, then the 52, nothing. Outside, through the window, I saw the sky light up with the first fireworks. Explosions of colored light, but no sound reached me. Not a single snap. Not even a distant echo. Just the hum of the building. And those 10 seconds that refused to end. I stared at the clock for too long, waiting for it to blink, to correct that ridiculous mistake on its own. 23:59:50. The red digits looked brighter in the dark, as if they were alive. I stood up and gave the side of the device a light tap. Nothing. Not even a tremor. That's when I realized something else. My cell phone was also stopped. The screen lit up with difficulty, as if it were too cold to function. The time blinked like the clock on the guard post. 10 seconds before midnight. No notifications, no signal, no Happy New Year messages, as if the rest of the world had been put on hold or switched off. I looked out the window again. The fireworks continued to explode in the Cleveland sky, beautiful, colorful, completely silent. I opened the guardhouse door just to be sure. The cold wind hit my face. Sharp, too real to be my imagination. But the silence outside was absolute. A silence so pure that my ears began to hurt. I closed the door quickly. My heart was racing now, and I was breathing shallowly, as if the air had thickened. The building creaked, that old sound of concrete settling, but it came late, out of rhythm, as if the sound had gotten lost along the way. The radio, which until then had only produced static, changed on its own. A male voice emerged, muffled and distant. 10. I held my breath. New. The voice seemed to come from underwater, drawn out, but clear enough to make my stomach churn. I took a step back. The radio was never loud enough for that. Never. 8. The clock's counter wasn't moving. No clock was moving. Only the voice. I began to feel a strange weight on my shoulders, as if someone had placed their hands there and was slowly pushing me down. It wasn't pain, it was anticipation. A suffocating feeling that something was waiting and growing impatient. When the voice reached 5, the radio turned off by itself. Silence has returned in full force. And, for the first time that night, I was certain that the problem wasn't the weather. It was the place. Or perhaps, if it were me, I tried to leave. I grabbed my coat and keys and walked to the building's main door. Each step seemed to require more effort, as if the ground were tilted against me. When I pushed the metal bar at the exit, it didn't budge, not even an inch. I tried again. Nothing. The green sensor above the door remained lit, indifferent. That's when I heard the footsteps, They weren't coming from behind. They came from everywhere at once. A slow, uneven dragging sound, like someone learning to walk in a body that wasn't their own. I held my breath, trying to pinpoint the source, but the sound never settled, always a few meters beyond my reach. The hallway lights flickered. In the reflection of the glass in the rooms, I saw figures moving out of sync with me. When I turned around, there was no one there. Still, the air was different, warmer, more humid, laden with a metallic smell, almost like wet rust. I ran back to the guardhouse. All the clocks in the building were visible from there. Analog, digital, my cell phone clock, the one on the security panel. They were all ticking, 23:59:50. But something had changed. The hands of the analog clocks trembled. They weren't moving forward, but they weren't still either. It was as if they were being held back by force. The radio turned on again. No music, no station, just one breath. Slow, deep, very close. And then, a voice different from the previous one. Lower, more intimate, whispered, "You always stop here." I felt a chill run down my spine. My head began to throb, and images that weren't my own memories started to mingle with my own. Other New Year's Eves, other night shifts, other men sitting in that same chair, looking at the same watches, waiting for the same 10 seconds. The countdown hadn't stopped. She was just waiting for someone to finish. And for the first time, I thought about how my whole life seemed trapped in that same interval, always postponing, always waiting for the right moment, always 10 seconds away from something that never came. The building creaked again. And inside my head, very slowly, someone began to count. If this made you uncomfortable, wait for the next chapter. The counting wasn't coming from the ears. She was vibrating inside. 4. My body reacted before my mind. My hands began to tremble, my fingers tingling as if they were falling asleep. I sat in the guardhouse chair because my legs no longer trusted me. The air seemed colder now, but my neck was wet with sweat. Each breath came in short, incomplete, as if the building were rationing oxygen. 3. The lights went out all at once. There was no total darkness, just that grayish gloom that lingers when your eyes are still open. But the world refuses to exist. I heard the building groan, not as a structure, but as something alive, ancient, finally moving after being still for so long. That's when I felt the presence behind me. There was no weight, no touch. It was worse. It was the absolute certainty that if I turned around, something would be occupying the space that had always been empty. 2. Images flashed through my mind like blades. All the decisions I postponed. All the times I chose to stay where I was out of fear of moving forward. Jobs turned down, people left behind. Years that ended without truly ending. The voice was clear now. It was no longer coming from inside my head. It was right beside me. Someone needs to accept it. I understood at that moment. The building didn't hold people captive. He arrested moments. And someone needed to stay behind to ensure that time kept running for the rest of the world. 1. I felt something move away from me. Not physically, but like a pressure that finally gives way. The lights flickered. The radio crackled with static. The digital clock trembled. For a second, I thought I had died. Then the digits changed. Bow, row, cow. The sound of fireworks exploded all at once, deafening, filling everything. The year had begun, but I knew, with a painful clarity, that something had been left behind with me. When the noise from the fireworks finally subsided, the building returned to its normal rhythm. The lights remained on. The radio resumed its regular programming, as if nothing had happened. Lively music, announcers' laughter. The world went on. I sat there for an indefinite amount of time, staring at the clocks. They were all working now. Seconds ticking by, minutes obedient, time docile once more. I got up and walked down the hallways. Nothing out of place, no shadows, no lingering sounds. The front door opened easily when I pushed it. Outside, the street was empty, covered in the remains of fireworks and smelling of gunpowder. A car passed in the distance. Real. Normal. I should have felt relieved. But there was something wrong with me. As I walked, I noticed that my breathing wasn't keeping pace with my body, always a little behind, as if part of me was still stuck in that interval. When I looked at the reflection in the shop window across the street, it took me a few seconds to recognize the face. My eyes seemed too attentive, as if they were waiting for something to happen. I returned home at dawn. I slept for hours, but dreamt of numbers that wouldn't advance, of voices that always stopped before zero. Since that night, every New Year's Eve fills me with panic. Clocks bother me, countdowns make me break out in a cold sweat, and sometimes, when everything gets too quiet, I feel that same presence beside me, not demanding anything, just reminding me. It was as if the building had released me, but time was still not sure if it should. If you ever notice that the seconds are taking too long to pass, don't fight it. Perhaps it's your turn to help the year end. If you listen to the end, you're already one of us. Subscribe so you don't miss the next whisper.